After endless gray skies and gusting winds, we finally got a blue-skied day with not a cloud to be seen. Tune in for an update on how my real-life flying lessons are going on my road to private pilot. We'll do a little plane spotting of other pilots landing and flying planes at my local airport while I give you the update. So I am 6 lessons in. The weather's been challenging the past month, but I did complete my online ground school. I have a blog for my authors page, and I've created a dedicated page detailing my road to my private pilot's license. So you can see each lesson that I've done, which aircraft I've flown in, whether it was ground or flight, and what topics we covered. When I started, it was a bit of a mystery. What could I expect in my first lesson? When would we do landings? When would we do stalls? Things like that. So I am putting that all there in the blog so that you can get a sense of what the flight training looks like for me. In my first 4 flights, we've done standard turns, climbs, descents, steep turns, slow flight, power on, and power off stalls. I've flown 3 of my school's 5 Skyhawks with 2 flights in 80471, 1 flight in 5707 Quebec, and 1 flight in 6706 Hotel. Even though they're all Skyhawk M's, the panel on each one is a bit different, and I spend a few minutes just trying to figure out where the heck the gauges have moved to each time. Usually my flight school's lounge is bristling with people because the pilots just like to hang out there, even if they're not flying. My flight instructor joked that it's kind of like an old school barber shop where there's just always people there talking. Today, however, everybody was flying, so I took an opportunity to snap some photos of what the interior looked like. It's got a really cool wall with all sorts of historic photos from the flight school, some comfy couches to sit on. In the back is the ready room. That's where we do the briefings. If the lounge is empty, then we'll use the table with the airport diagram right here in the lounge to do our briefings for the pre-flight. For today's flight, my instructor was finishing up with his previous students, so he sent me out to do the pre-flight on my own. I was a little nervous, but it was my 6th time doing it, so I had my checklist, and I went through it. When I finished up, I had a moment to snag this video of 80471 with the school in the background. If anything, I was overly thorough, showing him every nick and blemish on the aircraft when he came out. Here's the weather for this weekend's flight lesson: 12, gusting 20. It was actually 11 to 14 when we got the ATIS. So we had a conversation about whether I wanted to fly. He wanted me to know that I was going to get knocked around quite a bit, and I may get very frustrated because I won't be able to learn what I need to in a normal lesson because we're just fighting with the plane. I said yes, wind is part of flying, and to know what your personal minimums are, you've got to fly in wind, and I would rather do that with an instructor. This was my 4th time flying. On my 3rd lesson, I did my first CTAF call just for the taxi from the ramp to the old short line. This time, I did all the CTAF calls. My airport is in a Tersa, so we start out on CTAF, and then once we depart the pattern and head towards the practice area, we call up approach for the Tersa. So I handled the CTAF calls, he handled the Tersa calls with ATC. I finally got my headset sorted out on this flight. The past 3 flights have been fighting with my headset. I have the David Clark stereo model, and these Cessnas are mono. So getting the toggle switch set up to play in mono so I could hear in both ears was the first barrier, and then I just had some issues with volume. But finally this flight I could hear everything loud and clear, which was great, including ATC. I've been using FlightAware to go and look at my flight track afterwards, and half the times it's wrong. It seems to get confused about which aircraft it's tracking. So I had the idea that I could actually use Foreflight on my phone and turn on the record button. And hilariously, it recorded just my taxi from the ramp to the whole short line and then stopped. I also realized that Foreflight on my phone displays live traffic, so I can see the aircraft from my flight school flying around on my phone when I can hear them overhead from my house. And if I turn on live ATC, my local airport that has the Tersa is streaming, so I can hear the radio calls. So this is sort of a new hobby of mine. If I'm not flying, I like to listen to what's going on and watch the maneuvers on Foreflight. I see myself getting an iPad mini and running Foreflight on it. I've been creating some of the checklists in Foreflight on my phone's version of Foreflight, which I might try using for the pre-flight walk-around. What's great about the Foreflight checklists is you can customize them and you can add your own notes. So anything specific to the aircraft you can add as a comment. I also use the weather feature of Foreflight when I'm scheduling my flights. There's a bit of an art to trying to gamble and pick a date that will have good weather. The flights book up quickly, the time slots for the instructors, so you gotta plan ahead. So you're probably wondering how my Gusty flight went today, and I would say it was frustrating, as my instructor predicted it would be. It wasn't bad from a getting knocked around standpoint. Yes, we got knocked around. Yes, I expected that. I did not get motion sick. I don't know why, but I generally have not gotten motion sick to date in any of my flight lessons, even today. So that's probably a good sign. And I think that, as long as you are flying the plane, you're getting sensory input from it. I will bet if my instructor was flying the entire time, I would have gotten motion sick. One of the difficulties with gusting wind is that your instruments are just flopping all over the place. So even on the takeoff roll, you're looking for 55 to rotate, but the airspeed indicator is just all over the place. So the usual cues that you're using to do things are absent. The vertical airspeed indicator was just all over the place when we were in the air. And you couldn't rely on that to tell if you were level. As a simulator pilot turning into a real pilot, I knew that the first couple lessons I was going to need to unlearn being instrument focused and learn to build my sight picture for straight and level flight and what turn should look like. And I felt like I was making good progress on that. But the big aha is we've started doing slow flight, in particular for stalls, is your airspeed is going to affect the attitude of your aircraft. You're going to have to pitch your nose up to maintain level flight, at lower speeds. So your sight picture is going to be completely different. And I was perplexed today why, my nose is pointing up and I'm seeing nothing but blue sky and no horizon, but my vertical airspeed indicator is still descending. So you combine that with a somewhat unreliable VSI because it's moving around due to all the gusts, and you can't quite trust your sight picture because you haven't learned what it should look like yet. So that was kind of the theme for today's flight. It was just sort of frustration, feeling like I'd taken a step forward on my past couple lessons, and I took like 2 steps back today. Although I realized I didn't. I learned something, but it didn't feel that way when I was up there. So I've been making progress. My ground school, as I mentioned, is complete. I've passed the 3 practice exams for King schools, which means I technically have an endorsement to take the written FAA exam if I wanted to. I am thinking about that. I also have ground content from my instructor, and that helps solidify what I'm learning from Kings. So there's not really a rush to take the FAA written test. So I'll figure out what the right time is to take that. The other thing I have pending is my medical. So I mentioned in one of my previous videos there was a hiccup with my Class 3 medical. The exam was perfectly fine. I'm a normal, healthy guy, no issues there, but they go through your entire medical history, and the FAA has flowcharts for all these, and some of the legs of the flowchart result in a denied, others result in a need more information. When you provide that for some things, your AME can make the decision. For others, he has to boot to the FAA. And guys, this sucks, but I got booted to the FAA. So I'm sort of in limbo. I will get a response from the FAA. They may ask for additional information, or they might just make a decision, and we'll go from there. I can't solo without my medical, but I can continue my flight lessons, and I talked to my instructor about it, so if this takes a while, which sometimes it does, then we'll do everything we can do with dual instruction. I just found this out Friday, and I was pretty upset about it, but I'm going to keep my chin up, and we'll keep taking my lessons, and hope everything works out. Last tidbit I'll give you is just for fun. I found lots of interesting and helpful apps as I've been doing my training. This is Sparky's E6B you can get from the iOS App Store. If you've ever wondered what the E6B flight computer is all about, and you want to play with one for flight sim, you can get it as an app. It works exactly like the physical version, and it's really good to just try it out and incorporate it into your flight simming. Alright, so I am 6 lessons in, and I will keep you posted on how it's going. Some of my updates will be injected into my flight sim videos, and others will be dedicated videos just like this one. So thanks as always for listening to me, and stay tuned for further flight adventures.